Who are some teams that can play spoiler for the 2024 season? Let me talk you through some of the criteria that I have on what I mean by spoiler. You're outside of the top favorites to win your conference. You have a team that could be dangerous, could be a threat, but at the very least serviceable and can compete with some of the top dogs on any given Saturday. And you have some of those top dogs on your schedule, and maybe they're in a tough spot where they're coming off a bye week or whatnot, but you have a chance to ruin someone's season who has really, really high expectations. So first one here, let's go with Florida. Florida has like 8 top 25 teams that's going to be on their schedule, and like half of them are in like the top 5, top 10. Like their schedule is absolutely outrageous. So I'm not predicting them to win the SEC or do anything crazy like that. But I think because of their schedule right now, and because there's a lot of talk around Billy Napier being on the hot seat, that they're getting slept on a little too much right now. Like, let's not forget Graham Mertz had a fantastic season last year with a team that that underperformed, quite frankly. And he's back for another season under Billy Napier. And, if he doesn't work out, they got DJ Lagway, waiting right behind him. So they have like Ole Miss, LSU, Georgia, like they have everyone on their schedule. I think they could play some spoiler alerts here. They might be able to pop off one there. So they're definitely a team that I'm looking at that might be able to keep someone out of the playoff. All right, let's move to West Virginia in the Big 12. They got Penn State to open the season. Can you imagine if West Virginia just knocks off Penn State week 1? Penn State's expectations are now the playoff. They are probably the number 1 team to benefit most from the playoff expansion. What if West Virginia just gives Penn State an L week 1? That's really interesting. It was a relatively close game last year. I think it was like a 20-point game, but I think it was closer than a lot of people wanted it to be, especially in Penn State fans. And then they also got Oklahoma State, Kansas, and Kansas State. The next, those are the top 3-5 teams to win the Big 12 this year. They play them. Could they play spoiler to them? All right, let's move on to the ACC where we got SMU. Now, SMU, they are, I think, being a little bit slept on again right now because they're entering in a new conference. They're coming up from the G5, but man, they are good. They have a solid team, and I think they can compete immediately. And they have a relatively easy schedule, but they're playing Florida State, and then they got them at home, and they got Louisville. And like those 2 teams are in the top 3 to 5 to win the conference. And I think SMU could compete with those teams. And like, who knows, any given Saturday, like SMU is going to be a dark horse this year. You watch out for them. All right, well, now let's go to Cuse. They have NC State, Virginia Tech, and Miami. Again, 3 of some of the top favorites to compete for the ACC championship this year. Cuse with Fran Brown, Kyle McCord. They got a lot of dudes that they brought in from the transfer portal who I think will be immediate starters and make an impact. Like, can't count Cuse out. Like, they'll be a sleeper team this year for sure. So they could play spoiler alert to some of those teams who are trying to compete for the ACC championship. All right, moving down to Central Florida, where we got University of Central Florida. And they have Florida on their resume, and they got Utah and Arizona. Utah, Arizona, top 5 to compete for the Big 12 championship this year. UCF, another team who I think is flying a little bit under the radar because they're just coming up from a G5 rank from last year. But I think they have some dudes on their roster that can really compete and can really get after it and be a big threat to some of these schools like Utah and Arizona. So look to them to potentially play spoiler. All right, Iowa State. They obviously have the Cy-Hawk game. Iowa's always in the conversation. Well, was at least always in the conversation to at least represent the Big Ten West. That's no longer there anymore. But so they could be a threat to knock them out of contention early. And then they also have Kansas, Utah, and K-State. So, I think their win total is about 7.5. And Kansas, Utah, K-State, they're right up there in terms of like 8.5, 9.5 win range. Always competing for that conference title. So we'll see how that goes, and they have a good shot to knock some of those guys off. And let's hop into the SEC and talk about Auburn a little bit. So Auburn has Oklahoma and A&M at home. And obviously, they play Bama and Georgia. They played Bama and Georgia last year to the wire, and they could do that again. They're bringing in Cam Coleman, who will probably get some good time at receiver for them. They have Peyton Thorne coming back, Hugh Freeze in a new offense with a new offensive coordinator. Don't be sleeping on Auburn a little bit. I think it might be a little too early, but man, I would not be surprised if they knock off an Oklahoma A&M or Bama maybe this year. Like they could do that. They have the opportunity to do that. All right, and lastly, USC. It's kind of weird to put USC in the spoiler alert category, but I think that's kind of where they are this year. Now, they open up with LSU, who is going to be contending for the SEC championship this year. They go to Ann Arbor in week 4. They got Penn State at home, and then the one you really got to watch for is the end of the season with Notre Dame. Notre Dame has a pretty light schedule, and they need to go, 11-1 probably, maybe 10-2 at the very, very worst with their schedule. If USC go, I think it's at USC this year. I'm not sure about that, but if USC takes a win off of Notre Dame, man, that could be a serious season-ending, spot for Notre Dame right there, where they had all this hopes riding high into going into the playoff. Who Notre Dame was also a beneficiary of the expansion, like that just taken away from USC the last week of the season. So these are some of the spoiler teams I want to look out for during the season. Follow Big Body Ball on all socials: TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. You can also check out the full video on the Big Body Ball CFB YouTube page.